Hey everyone, and Tony here with a review of Prokofiev's The Fiery Angel, which was shown at the Komische Oper Berlin. And as always for this review, I have my little program here with me so that just in case I forget any names or screw up with pronunciation, I have this as my guide. The conductor was Henrik Nanasi, the production was by Benedict Andrews, the set design was by Johannes Schütz, the costumes were by Victoria Bea, the dramaturgy was by Pavel Jacek, the chorus master was David Cavelius, and the lights were handled by Diego Leitz. Now, this opera is so much different than that of Prokofiev's other work, The Love of Three Oranges. Now, while The Love of Three Oranges is very comedic and has a lot of fairy tale like elements combined with that of commedia dell'arte elements, this opera in particular is a lot more serious and has a lot more meat into the context that it has. It talks about demon possession, it talks about exorcism, religion, and pretty much the complexities of the human soul and the human spirit, and even that of the human body. This is very serious work, and this was also based on the novel by Valery Bryusov of the same name. Now, like I said, this is very serious, and there's no happy ending. There will always be certain moments that'll make you think and make you feel angry or scared or a bit uncomfortable at times. Not to mention the music, well, of how it's composed and how it sounds like is so much more different than The Love of Three Oranges. While it has that 20th century feel, it's a lot more dissonant and a lot more disturbing and quite frightening at times. But it's very exciting and very complex that I just can't help but really be on the edge of my seats whenever I hear all that dissonance in the music that's playing, which is very exciting for an opera as complex as The Fiery Angel. And frankly, this is also the first time I've watched this opera and even heard about this opera. And I've also heard a lot of great things about it. I mean, it has a complex storyline that makes you think and kind of questions your faith as well and who you are as a person and what beliefs you have. It's pretty much a piece that can make you question yourself and probably anger you a bit, but that's just me, and that's how I see this opera. It's it's very capable of making you feel uncomfortable at times, but it questions you. It kind of pushes you to think. And that's what I pretty much like about this opera. Now, going into the production, it's quite modern. I mean, some people say that it's Euro trash production. I probably use the polite term and say it's a regie production. It's a regie production. I mean, the stage is quite bare, but it revolves in a lot of scenes, and it's quite dark. I mean, there's almost no use for pretty sets and scenery here and there. It's almost quite useless as, they're not really concentrating on beautiful scenery and all of that stuff, but they're mostly concentrating on the psychology of the opera. Because let's face it, this talks about demon possession and religion. So I think the people behind this production just want to make sure that they don't overstuff it with a lot of pretty scenery or pretty this and that. No, it has to look real and bare and at times shocking. But that's what I kind of like about it. Sure, I could use a little bit more scenery here and there, but as it is, it's quite interesting. Though at times I kind of need a lot more scenery. But still, I think it's more important for any audience to focus on the drama and the psychology behind this opera. The costumes well, I thought were okay, not really the best that I've seen, but they kind of do suit the characters' personalities. Like, Renata is curious and quite naive, so she dresses in a lot of girlish clothing, but not too revealing. I mean, in one scene, she wears a slip, and another scene, she wears a pink dress that's almost reminiscent of Berg's Lulu. But the costumes really do accentuate of how the characters are as people. Renata is curious. Ruprecht is also curious as well, but is also on the verge of insanity. And that's pretty much it. It really shows the insanity that Ruprecht and Renata are facing. It shows their minds. It's maybe that's why it's so almost bare and quite not so pretty, because this is their mind. This is their story from beginning to end. Even though Renata is the last person in the opera, and she covers herself with kerosene and goes into the flames. And I thought that was just, whoa, that just frightened me. I was literally covering my ears because I thought, oh my god, is she gonna explode? Is something gonna happen? And that's just, whoa. Sure, the production in terms of set design could have used a lot more scenery, and the costumes could have been a little bit more traditional, but as it is, I think it's one of those regie directions or productions that probably might focus more on the psychology rather than just pretty sets and pretty costumes, but more on just raw psychology and raw drama more than anything else. Now, the singing was fine, really. There was a lot of fine singing. Starting with Renata, who was sung by Russian soprano Svetlana Zotsdateleva. I definitely felt that she was the star among the singers. She had such a homogeneous range that was able to attack all of the low notes and all the high notes and all of the middle notes very perfectly without any cracks whatsoever. And she basically had such a huge and dramatic instrument that can be lyrical at times, but it is just amazing and it's just astonishing. She was able to handle that tour de force of a role, which is Renata. Not to mention her acting was also very convincing. You could see that she is a very curious young woman and who also had experiences with seeing a lot of spirits around her. And she's also quite curious of what they look like when they truly show themselves. And that's just really one thing that's so stimulating about Miss Sozateleva as Renata. She was a very stimulating actress, but more than anything, her voice was in absolute tip-top shape. In the role of Ruprecht, we have Evets Abdullah. Sure, his voice was pretty good, but I wouldn't say that it's great. It's a good voice all throughout, but it didn't really have that much of an impact on me. Granted, his acting was superb. He was able to get in the moment of insanity and the moments of just raw madness that he gets himself into until it's too late for him to save Renata. It is just a harrowing portrayal of such a, well, male protagonist, or lack of a better word thereof. Still, his voice was good but not great. But more than anything, it's his acting that really compensated for his good singing. I definitely felt that he was a very involving actor. He was able to dig into that madness and just let it all out. He lets it out with such fury and passion and fire that it was just frightening just watching him on stage. And I mean it in the most exciting way possible. And then we have the basso, Jens Larsen, singing both Count Heinrich and the Inquisitor. Now, hearing him in the role of the Inquisitor was such a vocal force. He was able to use that basso voice, that dark, round, towering basso voice into such a great extreme and to his great advantage. He was able to use his instrument very well, and his stage presence was commanding and really intimidating. You could really feel the fire in his eyes when he's about to condemn Renata to the flames. You could really see the fire and you can feel it just burning through you. That is just how wonderful of both a singer and an actor Jens Larsen really was as both the Count and the Inquisitor. And the role of the hostess, even though it's a very small role, was Christiane Oertel, excuse me. She had such a luxurious sounding voice, and she had such a lovely middle and low register, and she was able to use those wonderful registers, both in the low and middle registers, to such a wonderful advantage. She was able to make the best out of such a small part that it was a very memorable interpretation. And her acting was also quite good as well. She was, well, basically, she was more on the less is more acting. And that's what I pretty much like about her. So props to her for making the best out of such a small and thankless role, all because of that beautiful sounding mezzo contralto voice. And that is just definitely her hugest asset, and she uses it very well in such a small and quite thankless role. And then we have Agrippa von Nettesheim and Mephistopheles, which were sung by Dmitri Golovnin. Now, with Agrippa, I was definitely just frightened just watching him lose his mind and step into insanity. I was completely amazed by Dmitri Golovnin's singing and acting as Agrippa. I was just astonished of just how powerful and how involving of an actor he is. Even though his voice didn't really sing over the orchestra, he makes it up for his astonishing and very enthralling acting. He was able to portray Agrippa's madness to a T. And that laugh before he dies was just thrilling. It's so on the level of the Joker from The Dark Knight. That is just how intimidating Golovnin is as Agrippa. And then we have the role of Mephistopheles. I realized that he was sung by Christoph Speth, who not only sang Mephistopheles, but also the bookkeeper Jakob Bloch. He was in fine form, and he had such a powerful instrument to use. But more than anything, he had such a lyrical sounding voice that was just beautiful to listen to, and at times can be dissonant when it has to be, especially in the role of Mephistopheles. He was able to use that dissonance very well. I mean, I was kind of scared just seeing him as Mephistopheles chewing that kid's fake arm. It was just, whoa, what the heck did I just see? But still, he was able to give such a memorable interpretation of Mephistopheles, and I definitely applaud him for that. And then we have Faust, who was sung by Alexei Antonov, who had such a firm tone and was able to sing all those low and middle notes very beautifully. And even though he didn't really have that much to do, he was able to portray Faust's weariness of the world. And I could definitely see that in his eyes and his gestures. But more than anything, it's his voice that really sold it for me, even though he didn't really have that much to sing. And then we have The Fortune Teller and the Abbess, sung by Zhenya Vyetsnikova. Now, I definitely loved her voice. She was able to use her mezzo contralto voice in such thankless parts to such a great advantage. Her voice was homogeneous, it was rich, it was quite round, but more than anything, it had a gorgeous tone. And her acting was very convincing, especially as the fortune teller. I could really see that at times the fortune teller can be a bit cuckoo, especially with the abbess who starts off as dignified and kind of hard nosed, but very dignified until she gives in to the madness. And then we have the roles of the servant and the host, sung by Hans Peter Scheidegger, who was in top form vocally. He had such a round and rich instrument, and he was quite a ham as well. But still, he was quite believable in his acting, and his voice, as always, was in tip top shape. Then we have The Doctor, sung by Matej Gal. Very good voice and very good stage presence as well, especially when it came to finding out if Ruprecht was okay or not. Then we have another small role, Matthias Wissmann, sung by Bernhard Hansky. A very luxurious sounding voice and was quite convincing in terms of, well, his concern for his friend Ruprecht. So overall, there was a lot of top tier singing. Well, not necessarily top tier, but really good singing all throughout. And the orchestra really did a fantastic job as well through Mr. Nanasi's conducting. He was able to keep up that creepy and chilling atmosphere of this opera, and the chorus definitely helped it. I especially also liked some of the little girls who were able to increase the creep factor of this opera, especially when Renata has her hair cut off and the girls were laughing. That was pretty creepy. So, yeah, this was a really good a good evening for me. A good evening for opera. It may be not the best production I've seen, but it's definitely not bad. It's quite interesting, at least, and it was able to make me see the psychology of it all. Not to mention, there was a lot of fine singing and great conducting by Mr. Nanasi, and I have to say, this was definitely a great experience, and this was basically an experience in terms of Prokofiev's The Fiery Angel that I'll never forget because of its complex music and its equally complex subject. Well, that's all for now. Be sure to tune into my next review, which is a concert review with Anna Bonita-Tibus singing at the Berliner Philharmoniker. Until then, this is Antoni signing off and wishing you all a good night.